Hello everyone, welcome to Design Shop Talk Live. I will be sitting in for Samantha, and I'm not sure if I'm going or not. Hello everyone, I hope we're live right now. Give me a second. All right. Okay, I'm Scott Stengel, ready to answer your questions on Design Shop Talk Live. Please chat them in if you have them. We've got several prepared from this week that people submitted ahead of time, and we'll try and answer them all. If not, we'll get answers and post them to this video once it's up and recorded. Okay, make sure everything's good. So let's start with the questions we have for this week. Not sure why I am not getting the chat. Weird. Cannot see your questions. Now we got everything. Okay, we're good to go. Sorry for the delay. Okay, welcome everybody. Type in your questions and we shall do our best to answer them. Okay, so first question we're going to deal with is, can you show us how to take fonts that are available to us? I guess that means either true types or actual embroidery alphabets, and basically convert them to vector. Oh, I gotta shut off.
Welcome everybody. Type in your questions and we shall do our best to answer them. Okay, so first question we're going to deal with is...
There we go. Okay, so how do we take fonts available, bring them up to vectors so that we can basically use them for artwork to digitize from? Really pretty simple. So here is DesignShop. Several different, or two different methods I can think of that you would use to create your artwork basically is true types or alphabets. And so I have come up with just a quick version of different types of letters. So two. First of all, this, as you can see up top, is a true type font, and this right here similar. We could easily change this one. Let's try, since we have a true type for there, let's go with just a standard block type font. We'll try block 2, I guess. Okay, so we have one of each. So if I want to convert them to vector, first we'll start with the traditional alphabet. Several ways. I can come over here and I go change element type, and I can pick vector fill right here. Of course, I would want to replace it then and not add it. Well, your choice, but usually you just want to convert it to vector so that you can digitize your stitches on the top of it. A faster way that we've shown a bunch of times here is to hold Control or Shift and click on what you want it to change to. In this case, we want this to be vector, so I'm going to change it and not add to it. So I'll hold Control, and then I can come to my fill tool, and the last one is vector fill method. Now it's all vectors. So if I go 3D, you could see this is stitches where this is actually vectors, and I can highlight each one and it's a vector shape. All right, similar for true type fonts. Same deal. We'll go with the other method, which is convert to vector fill and replace. And now I have my artwork converted in each of the two forms. At this point, you could digitize elements like fill or satin, column 1, column 2 on top of it, and go from there. So hopefully I answered your question on that. Another question we have is, let me see, since we're here, we'll switch the order a little bit up. How can I resequence elements for applique? Normally when you would type out an alphabet and convert it to applique, it would want to do the locator and then the tack down and top stitching for each letter and keep going through the process. It's a lot of color changes. You have to be at the machine, pretty much through the whole design to put fabric down. So sometimes it's easier to have it do all the locator stitches at once and then put down your fabric and then start the machine and have it do all the tack downs followed by the top stitching. You have to be a little bit careful to do them all at once if it's gigantic, because you might run into registration issues just because it's been so long since you put down some of the fabric till it finally gets to the stitching of it. So maybe you do half of front, at once, do the other half, something like that. But if it's reasonable size, you can a lot of times do all of it at once. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, let's go to, let's take this one. I'll go back to where they're alphabets so I can show you. Whoops. All right, so we are going to first convert this. So another way is operations, convert to wireframe, or convert to change element type, convert to vector, all that kind of stuff. So change element type, we're going to go with applique, and we're going to replace. All right, so we took the true type, we converted it to vector, and then we turned it back to applique in this case. But now, if I slow redraw it, you could see that it's going to do each letter completely at a time. So to save time, I wanted to do all the locators, then finish up after that, after I put the fabric down. Okay, so if I highlight it all, and this is, whoops, closed down on me. Got a lot of stuff open here, I'm sorry. All right, let's just do this again. We'll do open, and I'll go back to that. Let us just start again. we'll center this and probably do something like 3 inches. It's a good applique size. And I can take and convert it right away, or I can convert here to applique with control. Oh. All right. Now, as each of them are applique, I want to convert it to wireframe. Okay, that basically takes out the individual elements. It takes out the fact that one letter is an entire applique element, which would have a locator, a tack down, and top stitching. So all I need to do is resequence this together, and so I'm going to take basically the walk stitches, and I'm going to put them at the beginning of the design. So here is the O, and I'll move that up the line. And I have the C and the E, and last but not least, the O. Okay, so you see that it does a locator stitch, which tells me where to put the fabric. For the M, the E, the L, the C, the O, these would have trims once I saved it, and then the inside of the O. And then for these, I just change color to whatever. Okay, and that is how we resequence so that it does all the locators followed by the tack downs and the top stitching. Makes sense? Any good questions we got here? All right. Good morning to everybody. All right, so that is how to do that. Now let's see what else we have on the list. Printing from PDF. So this is popular with a lot of digitizing centers and all that, because you can attach a file that's basically a PDF that prints everything you need to know about the design. There is a bug which is slated on the list to be fixed soon, where printing, if you have more than 25 colors, it can run it off the page. So if you have a design that's got more than 25 colors, I just print a PDF. It's a good thing to do anyway, but it's a workaround in this case till we get it fixed. So I will open up a crazy design that I have here. It's got 112 color changes in it. It's a good one. All right, let me find it. So, I guess it wouldn't really matter. Where is it hiding? Okay, here's one that doesn't have 25 colors, but it'll show the same example. It's got 11. So rather than go File and then down to Print, and here it's normally going to go to whatever your paper printer is. Windows now comes with a PDF a printer built in, or you can go to the internet, download all sorts of different free PDF printers. So instead of sending it to a printer, a paper printer, right now I'm going to print to PDF. Microsoft Print to PDF is the default one that we have. And decide which parts of the logo we want to print, and then you hit OK, and then it's going to ask, where would you like this to go? Oh, we'll just send it to the desktop and we'll call it test print. All right, and we save that. And then at this point I can go find the file, which was right here. All right, so here, it's so big. You can see that I've got, it's huge for the screen. I have to bring my resolution lower so that you guys can all see it. So it's kind of huge to me. Okay, so here you can see that I have the picture of the design. And then as I scroll it, I've got my first, boost this up a little bit. I have my first 55 colors, then starting with 56 on 2 all the way down to, yep, 112 color changes. Wow, what a design. And then at this point, I can hit my print icon and send it to a printer from there. So I've got the file saved, I got a PDF saved. I can print something that's got more than 25 colors just till we get this fixed. All right, so that is how to print a PDF. Pretty cool thing, really. All right, let me shrink this down. Okay, and pull this guy over. Let's go to DesignShop. I'll close this one. And let's get back to the questions. So somebody had a question about how to compensate fills. So this is a common issue that comes up. Compensating fills to account for their shrinkage and all gets to be kind of a routine thing. So once you get used to it, it'll sort of fall in like clockwork. So I'm just going to fake one right here. We'll start a new window. And I will digitize a regular fill. We'll just do a square. How about make our point very easy. And start point, stop point. In this case, I'm going to do horizontal. All right, then I can, of course, add a border to it. Let's center this guy up. And the way I do that is through change element type, add a single line around it, or shift and click on single line adds the border, and I'll make it a different color just so you guys can see. All right, we'll go lighter on this color. Okay. All right, so the problem is we get shrinkage in embroidery all the time. And so an element is always going to shrink. A column or a fill, walk stitches, they don't shrink, is always going to shrink on its side, and it's always going to have to displace that extra thread that it shrank to the top and the bottom, so it's actually going to push up on the top and the bottom. So in this case, we're running horizontally, so it's going to shrink on the sides and it's going to push up on the top and the bottom. So if I look at my overlap here, you can see it's like 50%. That's what single line center does, right? 50% in, 50% out. The question sort of referred to how can I change the properties of the border so that it lines up with the fill that shrank too far. I think a better choice is to stretch the fill, and then everything is going to kind of behave from there. All right, make sure I am. Okay, so just give me 1 second, please. It's not behaving very nicely today. There we go. Okay. All right, so sorry for the delay on that. Okay, so I've got my whole designs 50% each direction. I would highlight the fill and just stretch it. So I want to stretch even amounts, right, since it's centered, to make sure. I mean, I could go stretch one side and then I could go stretch the other, but it's easier to just do them both. So if I grab the middle handle and I'm holding Alt on the keyboard, that says scale both sides proportionally. And so as I stretch out, boom, you see that both sides stretched out. Really, my rule of thumb is I'm going to stretch the border or the fill to the outside edge of the border on the sides, right? I mean, how can it stick past? it's always going to shrink. So even though it's touching the outside, it's never going to end up that way on my sew out. There's several. There's one we've sewn in class a bunch on hats called Legion Fields Farms, and I've used it in some of these design or the Facebook Live sessions that we do on Wednesday. And with that one, there is cases when going to the outside edge is not even enough. And so who cares? I mean, what it looks like on the screen doesn't matter. What it looks like on the fabric does. So in some cases, if it's a gigantic wide fill, you might even find yourself going past. Don't worry, it's going to come out right on the fabric. But a good rule of thumb for a starting point is line it up with the outside edge and you're in good shape. Now, at the top and the bottom of that fill, it becomes a whole nother story, right? We're going to displace that shrinkage by pushing the thread up on the top and the bottom. So if I line it up with the top edge, it's going to stick past. And I'm sure we probably have all seen that in our sew outs. You get a couple of rows of stitching, that, or one or two, that shows up outside of the column border. That needs to be compensated some more. So what I will do in this case, holding Alt, numbers, scales, proportion on both sides, or top and bottom, I'm going to shorten this up to about there. Now, it's never going to, there's never going to be a gap because it's going to push up, so hopefully this makes some sense to you. What you have to take into consideration is the direction of your fill. This is all good. This might work just fine right here now with some underlay and some properties and all that kind of stuff. However, if I go in and change this fill direction to 45 or whatever I would want, now this is not going to work. These are going to be short because you see the direction is this way, so it is going to shrink this way, and it's also going to shrink this way. So in this case, I would want to line up, get escape to get out of the stitch direction mode, and I will hold Alt to scale, and I'm going to start there. Pretty good. Problem is now, since it's stitching this direction at both of the corners, the stitches are going to hang out. So if I decide that, I'm going to put another node in here, and I am going to take my stop marker out of the way, and I will do something like this, right? Maybe even a little bit shorter, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other end, because what's going to happen on one is going to happen on the other. And also, we've always talked about center out, bottom up. Don't forget about those concepts. But this would be something that would work with underlay and all that kind of stuff. So you see the fill direction that you pick makes a big difference. You can take a design in Wireframe that's, say, got horizontal fills, everything works great, and then, let's change it to 25 or 40 degrees or something. Now it doesn't line up. So just know you have to edit, and know these concepts are solid for fills and borders, throughout embroidery, just how much that it shrinks. Okay, let's see, check some messages here for a second. Modifications to a previously saved file, go to another to work on it. I'll try and edit it to save as, and it wants to go to the last folder. Yeah, that's a Windows thing. If you hit save, it knows which file to go to. It's not going to go to the last file. What's happened is you've got a bunch of files open on the screen that have different folders, and it's going to want to, by default, show you your last file. So if you hit save, it's going to be in the correct place. Are you sending the design to the machine from DS? I don't quite understand that. That's the way I typically always load the machine, which if you have a Melco OS, it's simply File, Machine, and then Load Design, or you can queue it if you want to do that kind of stuff later. My favorite way to load the machine. All right, let's go down a little bit. Looks like Nate's on here helping me out. Okay, so let me move on. Let's go back to our list of questions. Okay, so compensating fills, PDF, resequencing for applique. This one comes in often. How can I tell if a design contains tie stitches or not? If I mean, on your machine you can tell because you get a lot of trouble when it starts up or whatever. The other critical part is if you don't have lock stitches in your design and and you wash that design a couple times, wash the garment a couple times with the embroidery, the design is going to unravel if it's got any width to the stitches. So how do we tell this? Go back to DS, and obviously it's going to be very, very, very easy in Expanded, or in Wireframe, sorry. I just right click on whatever element, go to properties. I'll pull this onto the screen for you so you can see. And I go to the tie-in and tie-off tab, and you can see now that I have tie-ins and tie-offs because they're checked. Just a word of heads up here, I guess. The default for designs, the old default for DesignShop, V9, early V10, was style 1, which is a good back and forth crossover lock stitch at 6 points and at default. That means it would decide how many tie-ins based on different criteria, size of the element, all that kind of stuff. We have found much better results, successful tie-ins with style 1, but increase 1 point to 7. Remember the needle's 7.5 points, so we'll move up to 7 and pick an odd number of tie-in stitches. In this case, I like 3. So these are my defaults that I use on just about everything. Then the tie-off, style 1, 6 or 7 depending on how big the element is. Obviously you got very teeny letters, you don't want to go with too long of a tie-off stitch. But that's the easy way to tell. You can select the entire design and they should be on for all elements within the design. Okay, so this out of the way. If I would, let's say, let me go in and I will turn off lock stitches on this one, just to show you an example. And then I will save it out. Oh, go to the desktop, I guess would be fine. And I could call it T-test, tie test. Okay, now if I open this file, whoops, hey, I guess it helps if I would save it in Expanded. Alrighty. Alright, here's the tie test. So obviously if I highlight and go into properties, pull those over so you can see, Expanded is a little bit different. So it shows that we have not turned them on within our software. But being that, let's say this was created by a different system, someone else, saved as Expanded, this isn't a true show of if it has lock stitches or not. They're digitized in and saved as expanded stitches because that's all expanded files know. So the best way to do it in this case would be to highlight your element and go into the Stitches tab. This shows you all the expanded stitches in the whole file. JMP is a movement without stitching. RO is read-only. It's a regular actual stitch in the fabric. So what you want to do is look after the jump stitches to see how tight are the stitches on startup. This looks not so good. You can see that my first stitch is 95 points, 127 points is half an inch, so we're talking big. And as I move through it, that's 15 points. It's long, 8 points, and then it just takes off going. So this doesn't have any tie-in stitches. Now I could go to the next element here, go back to the Stitches tab so that I see that here's the tie-off of that fill. Nope, there's no tie-off stitches there. Remember, I turned them off in DesignShop just to show you this. And then you can see here there's only 20, 30 point stitches, so those are not, does not have tie-offs. Well, you can add them even if they come in and expand it in DesignShop. So this case, I would highlight them. I would go to Properties, show you the properties, and I can turn on whichever style I want and apply them. And then you can see if I go into the expanded, let me see, I'll just highlight one. Go into the Stitches tab, that now I have TI is tie in and TO is tie off. So now I've got these tight couple of stitches that are going to secure things before it takes off and does all the underlay. And then if I keep moving down, just had it, where'd you go? There we go. You can see at the end of the fill I have tie offs and then I have tie ins for the start of the border. So that's how to check and see if you have tie stitches and also how to add them if you don't. Okay, let's check the questions. Looks like we are in good shape. Okay, when I digitize my own simple fill, how do I add a thin column stitch to the design to finish it up? So Sue, I'm not sure if you're asking okay, just a border around a simple fill like I showed, or did you want to go around the whole entire design? I'm taking it that you're wanting to add a border to a fill. Okay, so we'll just do that again very quickly. I'll close this guy out. Actually, we've got one already set up. How about that? So here is a fill. Okay, and I chose to go, what, 45 degrees, and I want to add a border to it. So simplest, method would be, well, slowest but easiest, most common, I guess, would be to grab the single line tool and then start at one corner, whatever you want to do. I always hold Alt when possible, in this case, because it's constraining the line to exactly vertical or horizontal. I've digitized 3. I'm not going to digitize the 4th point on top of the 1st. It's just easier for me to close a shape by hitting Shift and Enter. Then that just basically makes the last point on the top for me, but makes it easier to work on. Okay, so that's adding a single line to it. I would want to have lock stitch properties, underlay properties, make sure the density and the size and everything is that I want it. Of course, the other way to do it, like I showed, was highlight your fill and then add a border through Shift or Control or change element type to add it to it. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, no problem. Glad we can help out. All right, we're going to do these every week. I think I've burned through the questions that we had for this week. Please keep submitting them, and we will get to them. You can submit them to applications at melco.com. That's where we're checking and we keep the list going. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Hopefully you got some good information out of this one. Take care and we will see you soon.